The movie begins in a city in America where we meet a man named Mike. Mike worked as an engineer. He worked at a steel factory. Even though he was an American citizen, he was currently in Russia because of his job. Mike's only family was his wife, Julia. Mike and Julia loved each other very much. Even though Mike wasn't doing very well financially, he was very happy with his life because his wife loved him just as much as he loved her. But since his job kept him away from his wife, she was always waiting for him to come home. No matter how difficult it was, Mike would take time off every few months to visit his wife. That's how they happily spent their lives together. Before long, their wedding anniversary arrived, so Mike took some time off from work and was on his way home. Meanwhile, Julia was talking to him on the phone while getting everything ready to surprise him. Julia was so happy that day because she had been waiting for it for a long time. But while Julia was talking to Mike as she worked, the power in their house suddenly went out. Julia told Mike to stay on the line and went to check the circuit breaker. A few moments later, she managed to fix the problem. Mike then told Julia that he was going to take her to the beach the next day to celebrate their anniversary. Hearing that, Julia became so excited. Mike told her that he would be home in just 10 minutes. But right at that moment, a man suddenly showed up at Julia's house. This man had been watching Julia for a long time, so when he finally got the chance, he attacked her because he knew that Julia's husband wasn't home. Julia desperately tried to escape from him, but the man started brutally attacking her. She screamed at the top of her lungs, and Mike could hear every scream through the phone. Mike completely panicked. He stepped on the gas and drove home as fast as he could because he realized that his wife was in terrible danger. The attacker was stabbing Julia with a knife. Even though Julia fought with everything she had to survive, it was no use. Meanwhile, Mike rushed home as fast as he could, but by the time he got there, it was already too late. As soon as he arrived, he couldn't hear his wife anymore. Then, gathering all his courage, he walked into their living room. There, he saw his wife lying on the couch. When he rushed over to her, he realized that she was dead. Mike simply couldn't believe it. For a moment, it felt like he couldn't even breathe. As Mike held his wife in his arms and cried, the attacker suddenly came up behind him. He struck Mike on the head and ran away. Mike immediately got up and chased after him. But once he got outside, the man was nowhere to be seen. A short time later, Mike spotted him on a bus. So he ran over and managed to stop the bus. He got on board and started attacking the man, but the attacker tried to stab Mike with the knife as well. However, he couldn't overpower Mike. He somehow managed to break free and tried to run away. But this time, Mike grabbed the knife and chased after him. Several police officers nearby saw what was happening. As a result, both of them were arrested on the spot. But the criminal was actually a very wealthy man. So within just a few days, he was released on bail. Even after Mike told the court about the man's crimes, no one took any action against him. Instead, a warrant was issued against Mike. He was falsely charged with a terrible crime. They even claimed that Mike was also responsible for his wife's death. Then, the man appeared in court in front of Mike. He mocked Mike and said that his name was Sergio. He told Mike to do whatever he thought he could, because he had already bought off everyone involved. So no matter what Mike tried, he would never be able to touch him. Sergio even said that he had a great time with Mike's wife. Mike had quietly endured everything until then because he was a kind and humble man. But the moment he heard Sergio say that, he completely lost control. He grabbed a gun from a police officer standing beside him. Then, right there in the courtroom, he shot Sergio in front of everyone. Immediately afterward, Mike became completely calm. But since he had killed Sergio in front of everyone, the court sentenced him to life in prison. He was ordered to be transferred to a prison called In Hill. Once the hearing was over, Mike was immediately loaded onto a prison transport bus with the other inmates. He was taken straight to In Hill Prison, which was located far away from any populated area. It was one of the most dangerous prisons in Russia. This prison was reserved for inmates who were extremely violent and highly dangerous. It was also where prisoners were sent if they had escaped from other prisons multiple times. But this was a prison that no one could ever escape from. Even the conditions inside the prison were like living in hell. That's why many people called it hell on earth. The guards there treated the inmates with no respect at all. Mike was brought there along with many other prisoners. On his very first day in prison, the guards treated him terribly. They beat Mike and threw him into a room. There, Mike and all the new inmates had their heads shaved and were given prison uniforms. Mike had secretly hidden a photo of his wife inside his pants. It was the last memory he had of her. But during the search, one of the officers found it. Mike repeatedly begged them to at least let him keep the ring because it was the last thing he had left from his wife. But the officers took everything away from him. They even beat him badly, right in front of everyone. Then one of the officers looked at the picture of Mike's wife and made filthy, disgusting comments about her. After that, Mike was taken to a place called the communal cell. It was a very dark place, so it felt terrifying to Mike. Later that night, when all the inmates were asleep, several guards came into the cell around midnight. There was an inmate named Billy. The guards forcibly dragged Billy away. Billy was much better looking than the other inmates, so every night, the guards forced him into the cells of the prison's most powerful inmates. That night, he was taken to the cell of a dangerous inmate named Andre. There, Billy was brutally abused. Andre was actually a Russian mafia boss. He was also one of the most feared fighters in the prison. Members of his gang regularly paid money to the prison officers, so the officers helped him get away with all of these crimes. The next morning, when the inmates were being taken out of their cells, Mike noticed Billy. Billy was sitting alone, crying. His body was covered with bruises and injury. The night before, Mike had heard Billy screaming, but he still didn't know what had actually happened to him. Meanwhile, Andre was standing in the line with the other inmates. When he saw Mike, he started mocking him. He kept calling him his wife's killer. Hearing those words, Mike became furious. Then Andre shoved him. Mike immediately fought back. The two of them broke out of the line and started fighting. Even though the guards repeatedly ordered them to stop, neither of them listened. A few guards rushed over and restrained Mike, but they didn't say a single word to Andre. Instead, as punishment for the fight, they sent Mike to the prison's torture cell. It was one of the most horrifying places in the entire prison. Even the toilet there was overflowing. Dirty water spilled all over the floor. The horrible smell made it almost impossible for Mike to stay there. There was only one raised platform to sleep on, and even sleeping there was extremely uncomfortable. After Mike was thrown into the torture cell, he was given food only once. Then several days passed, and no one gave him any more food or water. Unable to endure the pain of starvation any longer, Mike decided to end his own life. Besides, he no longer had any reason to keep living. The person he loved more than his own life was gone forever. So he wondered, what was the point of staying alive? He took off his shirt and tried to use it to end his life, but he failed again because the fabric of his shirt was too weak. So he repeatedly slammed his head against the wall, trying to kill himself. But even after all of that, death still wouldn't come. Exhausted, he sat down in the corner of the cell. Just then, he noticed a beautiful butterfly. When Mike saw the butterfly, he felt as if it was his wife's spirit, still watching over him. At that moment, he began remembering the beautiful moments they had shared. He remembered his wife telling him that she always wanted to see him happy. She wanted to see him smiling, no matter what, and she wanted Mike to live a long and meaningful life. Remembering her words gave Mike the strength to keep going. He made a promise to himself that he would never try to take his own life again. Earlier that morning, he had been given a small amount of food, just enough to keep him alive. But because he wanted to die, Mike had refused to eat it. Then the butterfly landed on the food. Seeing that, Mike picked it up and began to eat. A few days later, Mike was finally released from the torture cell. That day, he was transferred to a new cell, but there was already another inmate in that cell. His name was Furious. He looked extremely intimidating. In fact, he had been sent there after committing 3 murders. So Mike was terrified of sharing a cell with him. One of the officers told Mike that they could move him to a different cell if he wanted, but in return, he would have to pay them money. Since Mike didn't have any money, he decided to stay in that cell. After walking inside, he remained completely quiet. He didn't want to do anything that might start a fight with Furious. Instead, he quietly walked over and lay down on his bed. But Mike didn't think Furious seemed like a bad person, because Furious was very quiet. He always kept to himself. In fact, he spent most of his time reading books. Even when Mike walked right past him, Furious barely paid any attention. And so, several days passed for Mike in that cell. But during all that time, Furious didn't say a single word to him. Meanwhile, Mike gradually became friends with the inmate named Billy. Billy told him everything about what had been happening to him. In fact, most of the inmates in the prison were Russian, but both Billy and Mike were Americans. While Mike was talking to Billy, an inmate in a wheelchair came over to them. His name was Henry. He was also an American, just like them. Henry sat down and started chatting with them. He had been in the prison for a very long time, so he knew every corner and every secret of the place. Mike spent time talking with Henry and Billy about life inside the prison. Before long, the three of them became close friends. Henry also told them that the inmate named Andre, who kept abusing Billy, had basically bought the entire prison. Everything inside the prison was controlled by his orders. He was a wealthy and notorious Russian mafia boss. Henry gave Mike some advice. He told him that money could buy almost anything inside the prison. So if Mike still had money in his bank account outside, he should have someone send it to him, and he should keep that money hidden and safe. That way, he could use it to get out of trouble whenever he needed to. Later that night, while Mike was asleep, he had a terrible nightmare about his wife. He dreamed about how that monster had attacked her. He saw how terrified and helpless she had been. As the nightmare continued, Mike started screaming in his sleep. The noise irritated Furious. So Furious walked over and covered Mike's mouth, but he didn't do anything else to him. Instead, he simply told Mike to stay quiet, but Mike was terrified. He thought Furious was going to kill him. Ever since he had been assigned to that cell, he hadn't been able to sleep peacefully because Furious couldn't stand any noise inside the cell. Mike was so scared that he hardly even dared to move. So the next morning, Mike borrowed some money from Henry. Then he went straight to the prison officer, who was in charge of everything there. Mike handed him the money and politely asked him to transfer him to another cell because he couldn't handle living in fear of Furious anymore. Just seeing Furious was enough to terrify him. But the officer laughed after hearing Mike's request. He said, "Aren't you embarrassed to come to me with such a tiny amount of money? That little cash won't get you anything." Hearing that, Mike walked away, feeling disappointed. Later that day, a young man named Jack came to visit him. Jack was actually Julia's younger brother. Jack told Mike not to lose hope. He said that what had happened was simply fate. Besides, Mike had already punished his wife's killer with his own hands. What greater justice could there be? He also told Mike that Julia had been given a beautiful funeral, and he was working with a lawyer to see if Mike's sentence could be reduced, so Mike didn't need to worry. Then Jack gave Mike some money. He said he had heard that money was useful for many things inside the prison, so Mike should spend it whenever he needed it. Mike thanked Jack. The next day, Mike and many other inmates were taken to another location. After arriving there, Mike learned that the prisoners were brought outside the prison to work. The jobs were extremely demanding, but every inmate was forced to do them. In return, they were paid a small amount of money. They could then spend that money inside the prison. So every prisoner worked hard at their assigned tasks. But Mike had never done this kind of work before, so he struggled to keep up with the job. An officer came over and started yelling at him. So Mike watched the other inmates and tried to copy the way they worked. After the work was finished, they were taken back to the prison. Then everyone was brought to the cafeteria for lunch. Mike sat down to eat with Billy, Henry, and another new inmate. But as soon as Andre saw Billy, he walked over to them. After seeing that they were weaker than him, Andre started insulting all of them. He even ruined their food before walking away. But none of them had the courage to stand up to Andre, so that day they had to go hungry. Later, while Mike was in the prison yard, he learned about a game called Sparka. This event was organized using the inmates. Only the strongest prisoners in the prison were allowed to compete. The entire event was run by the prison's general. Before every match, 2 inmates were forced into a brutal fight. Owners of major casino companies came there to watch. They bet millions of dollars on the prisoners. As a result, they made huge profits. At the same time, every officer working at the prison earned hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was basically a business that made money by exploiting the inmates. Many wealthy guests also came to enjoy the fights. They paid the officers large amounts of money as well. Even the general himself placed bets on different inmates. His favorite fighter was Andre, because Andre was incredibly powerful. Every time the general bet on him, Andre won. This time, the general placed another bet on Andre, and once again, Andre defeated every opponent within moments. After winning several matches in a row, Andre challenged Billy to fight him, but Billy was terrified and immediately walked away. But since Andre tortured Billy every night, Billy decided to stand up to him. He sharpened his toothbrush and turned it into a weapon. Then, when the guards brought Billy to Andre's cell, Billy tried to attack him with the homemade weapon, but Andre saw right through his plan. Instead, he brutally beat Billy. The next morning, while Mike and the other inmates were working, Andre walked over to Mike and shoved him. He accused Mike of disrespecting him and his gang. He said that, unlike the other inmates, Mike didn't show him any respect. Mike protested. He asked Andre why he kept picking on him for no reason. He told him that he had never done anything to him, but Andre replied that he didn't like Mike's attitude. He said that every other inmate followed his orders. So why did Mike think he could do whatever he wanted? Mike had to obey him too. As Andre kept talking, he started putting his hands on Mike. Mike complained to one of the officers, saying that Andre was harassing him for no reason, but the officer was on Andre's side. He didn't say a single word to Andre. The other inmates were too scared to get involved, so they quietly went back to their work. Meanwhile, Andre and his gang brutally beat Mike. They knocked him to the ground and repeatedly kicked him. Even though Mike had done nothing wrong, he was sent back to the torture cell. It was the same place where he had been punished before, but Mike had no choice. He had to stay there again. This time, he noticed a crack in the wall of the cell. It looked like it had been caused by a hard impact. After a while, he started hearing knocking sounds coming from the other side of the wall. He realized that there was probably another cell on the other side with another inmate inside. The inmate knocked on the wall several times, trying to get Mike's attention. When Mike knocked back, the other inmate responded as well, but Mike tried to communicate with the inmate on the other side. However, the other inmate probably couldn't hear anything he said. Almost 2 weeks passed like this. During that time, Mike tried many times to talk to that prisoner, but they could only communicate by knocking on the wall. Neither of them could hear the other's voice. Mike thought the wall was too thick, which was why they couldn't hear each other. But through those knocks on the wall, the two of them slowly became friends over those days. The next day, Mike's punishment finally ended. He was taken out of the torture cell again. As Mike was walking back to his cell, Andre approached him once again. Andre started bothering him again. He warned Mike that if he ever disobeyed him or disrespected him again, he would send him to the torture cell for the rest of his life. But Mike didn't say a single word to him. Instead, he ignored Andre and quickly returned to his cell. Furious wasn't there that day, so Mike picked up Furious's books and quietly started reading them to pass the time. But suddenly, Furious came back. Seeing him, Mike became extremely nervous. He quickly told Furious that his books had collected some dust and he was only cleaning them. After hearing that, Furious said nothing to him. Later that night, Mike went to dinner with his friend. As usual, Andre showed up again. He started insulting Mike and saying all kinds of disgusting things. Mike kept silently tolerating everything. But after a while, Andre said, "I heard your wife was raped. But no matter what you say, I saw your wife's picture. No man could stay calm after seeing a woman like her." The moment Mike heard those words, he completely lost control. He was already deeply depressed because he couldn't stop thinking about his wife. And now, Andre was disrespecting the woman he loved more than anything. Mike snapped. He attacked Andre, even though Andre was one of the strongest inmates in the prison. No one could stop him. Mike beat Andre so badly that he was left in terrible condition. As a result, Mike was sent back to the torture cell once again. After several days, a terrible explosion suddenly occurred outside the prison. The explosion created a huge hole in the ground. Billy decided to use this opportunity. He slowly started making the hole bigger from inside the prison. One day, he tried to escape through that hole. Another inmate was with him. As they were running away, a guard spotted them. The guard immediately shot the other prisoner and killed him. Although Billy somehow survived, the guard caught him and brought him back to the prison. As punishment, the general sent Billy to the cells of the most violent inmates that night. He collected money from each of them. Meanwhile, we see Mike. Mike had become much stronger now. He had finally understood that he couldn't survive in this prison by staying weak, because only the strongest inmates ruled this place. So he made a promise to himself. He would become the most feared prisoner in the entire prison, someone that everyone would be afraid of. That's why, even inside the torture cell, Mike started training himself. Every day, he performed extremely difficult exercises. He slowly made every muscle in his body stronger. Using small objects inside the torture cell, Mike was able to train himself very effectively. Many days passed like this. Then, when Mike was finally taken out of the torture cell, he continued his training. He used heavy objects to exercise. Even when Furious was sleeping, Mike used their bed to train silently without making any noise. Day by day, he became stronger and stronger, but no one knew about his training. Even when Mike was taken outside with the other prisoners to work, he intentionally chose the hardest tasks. This way, he became stronger and stronger. Slowly, he was able to lift even extremely heavy objects. Furious noticed Mike's training for several days, but he was actually happy about it. He didn't say anything to Mike. After several days, another Spark of Fighting event was organized. As always, Andre was the main fighter. This time, Mike was chosen to fight against Andre. Before the fight even started, Andre kept making fun of Mike, but Mike took this fight very seriously because he had trained for this exact day for so long. Soon, the fight began. It became clear that although Mike was physically strong, he had never fought in a match like this before, so he couldn't control Andre. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't even land a single hit on him. Andre kept beating him and quickly made Mike's condition worse. He even punched Mike so hard in the eye that everything started becoming blurry. But at that moment, Mike remembered his wife. He remembered how that monster had tortured her. He also remembered the disgusting things Andre had said about his wife. Thinking about all of that, Mike found his courage again. He grabbed Andre's leg and slammed him down with incredible force. Andre lost control. Then Mike started beating him brutally. Everyone was completely shocked. Even the officers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Andre was being beaten so badly. Mike kept attacking Andre in front of everyone until he was covered in blood. For the first time, a prisoner had defeated Andre, but Mike wanted to kill him. Seeing this terrifying side of Mike, every inmate became afraid of him. The officers who had placed bets on Andre lost a huge amount of money. Even the general suffered a massive loss because of Andre. After this incident, Andre lost all of his popularity. After that, he couldn't defeat Mike in several more matches. Slowly, even the prison officers started supporting Mike, and now the general started betting on Mike. As a result, he was making a huge amount of money. So every few days he organized new fights, where Mike was the main fighter. Mike also kept fighting different inmates just to prove himself again and again. Following the general's orders, he brutally defeated every opponent, but the person who benefited the most from all of this was the general. The general had basically turned Mike into a puppet. He used Mike and made a huge amount of money from it. And slowly, Mike had changed a lot. The kindness and innocence he once had were no longer there. But Billy didn't like this side of Mike at all, because he liked Mike for the kind and simple person he used to be. Even Furious didn't like what was happening. Both of them understood very well that the general was only using Mike for his own profit. Mike wasn't really winning these fights. The general was winning by betting on him. After finishing another match, Mike returned to his room. He was shaving his head and cutting away all of his hair. Just then, Furious came into the room. Furious saw that Mike had completely changed his appearance. He looked exactly like a mafia gangster. So for the first time, Furious spoke to Mike. He said, "Mike, you know, I really liked your innocence. The person you're trying to become now, that's not who you truly are. Please don't lose the real you just because you gained power. It's okay to become stronger in this prison, but don't become a puppet in the hands of the officers. Don't let them use you to make money by betting on you. They are only using you." But Mike just silently listened to everything Furious said. He didn't reply with a single word. A few days later, it was Russia's Independence Day. Since this was a Russian prison, everyone inside the prison was busy celebrating the occasion. Because of this, Billy finally got a huge opportunity to escape from the prison, because Billy didn't want to stay there even for one more day. Every moment inside that prison felt like hell to him. He couldn't take the torture he suffered every night anymore. And today, Henry was going to help him escape. Since Henry knew everything about the prison, he also knew where the prison keys were kept. So after a lot of effort, Henry managed to bring the prison keys to Billy. Billy sincerely thanked him. Then he went to Mike to say goodbye. He told Mike that he was leaving the prison that day. Meanwhile, Mike had a special fight scheduled for that day. His opponent was a prisoner named Falia, who had been brought from another prison. Falia was known as a very dangerous and powerful fighter. At first, the two of them introduced themselves to each other, but since it was Independence Day, their fight was postponed. Everyone was told to enjoy the celebration instead. That night, while everyone was busy having dinner at the party, Billy used the opportunity to escape. But right at that moment, the general arrived, and they caught Billy. Here, we learned that Henry had actually betrayed Billy. Henry himself had told the general everything about Billy's escape plan. He did it in exchange for some medicine, because without those medicines, his health became very bad. However, while Henry was telling the general everything about Billy, Furious was secretly watching the whole thing. But Billy never imagined that Henry would betray him like this. The general captured Billy again. The next day, another fight was organized in the prison. Falia was told that if he could win the fight, he would receive a special reward. Falia was extremely powerful. He had defeated many strong fighters before. So this was the first time Mike was fighting against Falia. Mike couldn't understand his fighting style or strategy. As a result, Falia easily won the match. Later that night, Falia was given his prize. And that prize was actually Billy. The officers took Falia into Billy's room, but Billy was completely silent that day. He didn't protest or fight back at all. The next morning, Billy was found lying inside his cell in terrible condition. His body was covered with hundreds of injuries. Falia had tortured him so brutally that Billy was now counting his final moments. Even in such a horrible condition, no one came near him. But then Mike saw Billy. He quickly rushed over to him. Before dying, Billy told Mike that everyone in this prison was using him. He told Mike never to become their puppet. He wanted Mike to return to his true self. Because instead of living hundreds of years as a bad person, it was much better to die as a good person after living just one day with honor. While saying these words, Billy passed away. Billy's death left a deep impact on Mike, because everyone in this prison had tortured Billy so much. They had treated a human being like a monster would treat someone. Soon after, the next fighting match began. This time, Furious and Mike were supposed to fight, but Mike kept remembering Billy, so he just sat there silently. From that day on, he no longer wanted to fight. But then, Falia entered the arena to fight him, and the match began. However, Mike didn't attack him even once. Meanwhile, the general had placed a bet on Mike. So seeing Mike's condition, the general became extremely angry. Because Mike just stood there silently, Falia easily won the match. But this made the general furious. So he decided to punish Mike. He took Mike away from there on a train because Mike had made it clear that he would never fight again after that day. Then we see Mike. He was tied to a pillar in the middle of the yard. His hands were raised above his head and he was chained there. The sun was extremely hot, making it very difficult for Mike to stay there. But even after hours passed, they still didn't release him. Meanwhile, we see Furious. He found Henry alone in one place, so he took the opportunity and walked toward him. He had a small bottle of kerosene with him. Furious started pouring the kerosene over Henry's body. Henry became terrified. He asked Furious why he was doing this to him. Furious replied, "Because you became friends with an innocent person, and in the end, you betrayed him. Because of you, Billy had to die. If you had really helped Billy escape that day, his life could have been saved. You are responsible for Billy's death, so you don't deserve to live either." Henry kept begging Furious for forgiveness, but Furious set his body on fire. As a result, Henry died right there. Meanwhile, we see Mike. Even after several days passed, the general kept him hanging there. No one came to help him even once. The sun, the storms, and the rain all hit him day after day. But Mike didn't seem to feel anything anymore. After suffering so much pain, he had lost all his emotion. But even after everything, he still refused to fight, because he knew if he fought and won, the corrupt officers of the prison would be the ones who benefited. However, the general had decided that Mike would remain hanging there until he agreed to fight again. Meanwhile, there were two other powerful gangsters in the prison. Both of them had their own large group. When these two gangsters kept watching Mike's condition, they started feeling sorry for him, because once, Mike couldn't even survive in the prison because of Andre, and now, that same Mike was suffering this much pain. Thinking about everything, the two gangsters decided to unite their teams for Mike. During the next match, When they were ordered to fight, both of them announced that they would no longer fight each other just for entertainment and money. Hearing this, the officers became very worried, because now none of the prisoners wanted to obey their orders. So even if they wanted to, they couldn't punish every inmate the same way they punished Mike. But everyone, including the officers and the general, became extremely angry because of the prisoners' decision, because if the prisoners refused to fight, they would no longer be able to make money. Seeing this rebellion among the inmates, their head officer ordered the general to release Mike. The general then freed Mike and sent him to the prison hospital because Mike's condition had become very serious. While Mike was unconscious and sick, he kept seeing his wife. In those visions, his wife told him that he was finally on the right path. She also told him that she was very proud of him. Hearing that, Mike felt a deep sense of peace. After Mike recovered, he was taken back to his cell. Then one night, the head officer arrived at Mike's cell block. His name was Rush. Rush was extremely angry with Mike because of Mike, all the prisoners had turned against them. Rush came to Mike and told him that he had one final fight left, and even if Mike didn't want to, he couldn't avoid this fight because they had already prepared everything. All the prisoners who supported Mike had been locked inside their cells. Before Mike could say anything, the officers brought in an inmate named Milak. He looked like a complete monster. This prisoner was extremely violent. He actually had mental problems, and he would brutally attack anyone who came in front of him. He was even strong enough to lift nearly 2 tons of weight with one hand. That was why the officers had kept him locked inside a separate cell for so long. Whenever they needed to punish a prisoner, they used Milak to do the killing. The officers released Milak in front of Mike and then moved away. Mike was terrified when he saw Milak, and Milak immediately attacked him. He grabbed Mike and started throwing him around like a toy. The officers were enjoying the scene. At one point, Milak grabbed Mike by the throat and was about to kill him. But suddenly, there was a door right in front of Mike. Mike started hitting the door with one hand. Then something strange happened. Milak suddenly became completely calm. He released Mike and stood there silently for a moment. Then he started hitting the wall with his hand. And here, we learn that Milak was actually the same prisoner who was kept in the torture cell next to Mike. He was the one who communicated with Mike by knocking on the wall. When Mike saw Milak, he immediately realized that he was that same prisoner. So he was hitting the door, trying to communicate with him and save himself. When Milak also recognized Mike, he walked over to him. He gently touched Mike's face. Through his actions, he apologized to Mike because Milak considered Mike his friend. In the entire prison, Mike was the only person who had ever tried to communicate with Milak. Seeing Milak's reaction, Officer Rush and the others were completely shocked. The general became furious with Mike. He pointed his gun at him, ready to kill him. But Mike shouted, "Even if you kill me right here, I will never fight for you again. I will never hurt another person just for your benefit." When Milak realized that his friend was in danger, he rushed forward. He started attacking the officers one after another. He grabbed them, lifted them up, and slammed them to the ground. Seeing everything that happened between Milak and Mike, the prisoners became extremely motivated. They finally stood up against the officers. Together, they broke open the doors of their cells. Then they came outside and started fighting against the prison officers. A huge fight broke out inside the prison. During the chaos, Milak was shot and killed by an officer from a distance. Mike was devastated by Milak's death. He felt extremely sorry for him. Then, with deep respect, Mike covered Milak's face with a piece of cloth. Meanwhile, while all the prisoners were busy fighting the officers, Mike went straight to talk to Furious. He told Furious that he was right. Furious had told him that he needed to return to his true self. No matter how much Mike tried to change and pretend to be a bad person, deep inside, he could never become one. Mike also remembered something Billy had told him, something he would never forget for the rest of his life. Billy said, "Instead of living for 1,000 years as a bad person, it's better to live even one day as a good person." Then Mike told Furious everything about his life. He explained how he ended up in prison and how brutally he and his wife had been treated. After coming to this prison and suffering thousands of tortures, he was forced to change himself. Hearing Mike's story, Furious became very emotional. Furious told him that although people thought he was a bad person, the truth was that he had a very kind heart, and he also could never tolerate injustice. Then Furious told Mike that he wanted him to return to his normal life. He wanted Mike to live like the simple and kind person he used to be. So if Mike wanted, Furious could help him escape from the prison. After that, Furious took Mike to his cell. He gave Mike some important documents. He told him that these papers contained all the evidence against the officers who were involved in corruption inside the prison. They also contained proof of all the crimes committed against the prisoners. Even all the information about the illegal betting and fighting events inside the prison was included. Furious told Mike to take these documents with him. Later, he needed to submit them in court. He also needed to reveal everything in front of the U.S. government and the media. Meanwhile, after seeing the terrible situation inside the prison, the officers called for help. More police officers arrived at the prison. Together, they started capturing the prisoners again. Because of this, Mike no longer had any chance to escape, but Furious had already created a plan. Furious told Mike that he had to agree to fight the officers one last time, because when the fight started, all the officers would be focused on the match. Meanwhile, Furious would take care of everything else. Following the plan, Mike agreed to fight. The next day, his fight against Falia began. Like always, Mike fought extremely well. During the fight, Mike hit Falia so hard that his shoulder bone broke. Falia became furious with anger, so he pulled out a hidden knife from his shoe and tried to stab Mike, but the knife hit the body of a Russian gangster standing nearby. Because of this, another fight broke out inside the prison. They decided to kill Mike. The general then took Mike to a prison garage, a place where no one was ever allowed to enter. But Furious already knew the secret way to that garage. As soon as Mike was taken there, Furious entered the garage through a hidden passage. He attacked the general and his companion from behind. He struck them on the head and knocked them unconscious. Then, Furious told Mike to disguise himself by wearing an officer's uniform. Mike did exactly that. He also took back his wedding ring from the general. It was the same ring that the general had taken from him on his first day in prison. Before escaping, Mike asked Furious to leave with him, but Furious told him that he couldn't go with him yet because he still had an important task to complete inside the prison. After finishing that, he would escape. Following Furious's plan, Mike disguised himself as the general. He walked straight to the general's car, sat inside, and easily escaped from the prison. Meanwhile, Furious went straight to the head officer's room, meaning he went to the officer named Rush. There, he grabbed Rush by the neck and killed him. He did it because Rush was the reason his entire family had died. Rush had destroyed his whole life. When the other police officers arrived after hearing about Rush's death, Furious surrendered himself because his revenge was finally complete. Meanwhile, we see Mike. Mike had reached the U.S. government office. He was extremely happy to finally return to a free life. That same day, Mike submitted all the evidence against the prison in court. He also exposed everything about the prison in front of the media. 3 months passed like this. Since all the evidence against the prison was proven true, the prison was permanently shut down. All the officers were fired from their jobs. And since Mike had killed the man who assaulted his wife and caused her death, all of Mike's remaining punishment was forgiven. Mike returned to his simple life once again, just the way his wife Julia always wanted. And with this beautiful moment, the story comes to an end.